What is up, beautiful humans? Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I taught myself English and some of the things that I did to learn English that I think can benefit your own language learning and can hopefully help boost your English learning process. So before we start, let's first talk a little bit about my background so that you guys get some perspective on my story. 7 years ago, roughly 7 years ago, when I had just entered college, my English was, I was this quintessential Vietnamese STEM student. I was relatively good at math and I was very good at physics and chemistry. In fact, I almost got a 10 on my physics and chemistry test in the university entrance exam. But my English was pretty much non-existent. And when I went to college, everyone was like, learn English, otherwise you end up jobless with no money, no future, no career, no nothing. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but man, they were serious about this thing. And so naturally, I got my lazy ass up and went and tried to find ways to teach myself English because obviously my cheap / broke ass was never going to spend money on any classes. And fast forward to 4 years later, when I was in my last year of college, when I had to take the TOEFL IBT test and the TOEIC test, I was only able to spend several weeks preparing for those tests and ended up getting 115 on the TOEFL test and 190 on the TOEIC test. So I thought to myself, what I did to learn English actually worked. And now I'm going to share it with you guys. The very first things that I learned were pronunciation and grammar. So first of all, let's talk about pronunciation, shall we? I'm sort of a perfectionist, and it can be annoying sometimes, but when it comes to pronunciation, it does help because I wanted to get every single sound right. And so I just went and Googled and got a hold of the IPA of the English language. And most of you guys are probably already familiar with this, but if you're not, then IPA stands for International Phonetic Alphabet, and it's basically a list of sounds that exist in English. And there's a myriad of pronunciation tutorial videos or accent training videos on YouTube. And so I just went to YouTube and I would just type in a certain sound plus pronunciation, for example, T pronunciation. And I would just learn from these videos how to produce those sounds correctly, how to position my tongue and different parts of my throat and my mouth, and I get it. It's a very boring and tedious process, and it can be frustrating too because it's very likely that you're not going to get it right the first time you do it, or the first 10 times or 50 times you do it. And but I think it's worth it because if you are to invest your time in pronunciation, why not go all in and give it your best shot? The YouTube channel that I found to be the most helpful is called Regis English, and I will put the link in the description box below. It's only going to take you several weeks or a month to finish learning kind of the theory part of pronunciation, but that's not all. Because for me, and you don't have to do this, but I think if you want to perfect your pronunciation, and not just pronunciation but also other things like intonation and rhythm, then it's something you work on throughout your years of learning English, because pronunciation is not something you can master overnight, and it takes a lot of practice for your muscles to be able to produce those sounds 100% accurately, and for your brain and your ears to become familiar with English sounds and become attuned to the different nuances of the way native speakers speak, and to actually be able to tell whether you're doing it right or not. So I think the key here is to be patient, and if you keep on practicing, eventually you'll get there. So what's next? After you've learned all the individual sounds, what should you do next? Another very important thing that I think you guys should do is look up words in a good and reliable English dictionary like Cambridge or Oxford or Longman. It doesn't matter. Or better yet, use them all. But I don't recommend using an English Vietnamese dictionary because oftentimes the pronunciation information in these dictionaries can be wrong, and the audio quality isn't that great. And that leads me to my next point, which is when looking up words in the dictionary, don't just look at the IPA. You have to listen to the audio too, because you have to hear how native speakers say it. Because, like I said before, simply knowing the theory isn't enough. You have to be constantly comparing how you say things to how native speakers say it to improve your pronunciation. Also, a pretty cool tool that I've discovered is that to check your pronunciation, you can use an app called Smule. I think most people, myself included, would just record themselves and listen back to the recordings, but this entails recording yourself and listening back to it, and I think it's just a very boring thing to do. With Smule, you can actually listen to yourself speak in real time. How cool is that? And all you have to do is start singing a song and then pause it so you're not disturbed by the music, and then just enjoy the amazingness of this app. I'm using this to learn German too, and it was like a charm, I think. Alright, let's move on to the second thing, grammar. At first, when you first start learning English or any other language for that matter, grammar can seem very complex and difficult, and you just can't seem to wrap your head around all these grammar concepts. But I think grammar can be considered the easiest part of learning language, especially for English, because English grammar is rather simple compared to German or French. Their grammar system is just a lot more complex. And I think this way because there's only so much you have to learn about grammar. And after that, you're done. That's it. It only takes you a short amount of time to do it. Whereas for vocabulary, for instance, it takes you your whole life to build up your vocabulary. I've seen many people say that you don't need to learn grammar, just forget about grammar, and that everybody makes mistakes, and just focus on kind of forcing words to come out of your mouth. But to me, it's like saying, oh, if you want to learn math, you don't need to learn rules or theorems or anything. You just need to know numbers and symbols and just write whatever equations you want. It might not be a good analogy, but you get the idea. To me, grammar is crucial. Grammar and vocabulary are the skeleton of your English. They help you understand people and help people understand you. They help you express yourself more clearly and more correctly. Without grammar, you'll be in a constant state of uncertainty where everything is a blur and not knowing if things you say are correct and just having to always guess what people mean, and it just doesn't work for me. And some people say you don't have to learn grammar because your subconscious would do it for you. But I truly believe that as adult learners, we don't have that luxury of children where things just come naturally to us. Our subconscious can't just absorb all the grammar and then one day whatever we say or write is grammatically correct and natural. I think if we don't actively try to learn and improve and correct ourselves, we just won't improve. Okay, that's enough pep talk. Let's talk about how I actually learned grammar. In a nutshell, I treat grammar books as a dictionary or like an encyclopedia. So I just read through an entire grammar book without doing the exercises, because I thought to myself, even if I do these exercises, by the time I finish this book, I'll have forgotten it anyway. So I would just read about a grammar concept. I just know about its definition, its usage, read a lot of examples, and just know that this grammar concept exists. But I still can't quite use it yet. And here comes the cool part. After I finished the book and familiarized myself with all the grammar I needed to know, I started this analysis phase, as I call it. And what this means is whenever I read or heard anything in English, I just try to analyze it. And I ask myself, why is this tense used here and why this structure? And I just go back to the book and read about that grammar concept again. And if I still can't figure out why it is so, then I just turn to Google or ask my friends, but mostly Google. I think these days you can find the answer to pretty much any grammar questions on Google, especially on websites like Word. I did this intensively for a few months, and soon I found myself understanding a lot more about how the English language works. I think this method works great because you'll be only analyzing what you encounter, which is the practical part of grammar, which is the part that you actually need for your English, for your speaking, and not just the part that only linguists know. And I think after doing this, you'll be able to apply all the grammar you've learned to your speaking and not just know about it but can use it, which is what matters. Okay, so let's finally talk about the notorious vocabulary. A lot of my friends and the people that I know have told me time and time again that they just can't freaking learn vocabulary. They can retain none of what they've studied, and it feels like all of their efforts were in vain. And it just made them feel like they're not good at learning languages and make them think they just can't do this. I think there's a lot of misleading conceptions regarding learning vocabulary, and I think the wrongful notion that the ability of a person to learn languages is innate can a lot of times discourage people from putting in more effort and make it easier for them to give up on learning a language. Here's what I think is the ultimate truth when it comes to learning vocabulary. It's practically impossible to really learn a word just by studying it once. Of course, there are exceptions, like when a word is linked to an event that really impressed you, then it's a lot easier to remember. But most of the time, it's impossible. You can't just run into a word you've never seen before, look it up in the dictionary, and know what it means, and finish the process of learning that particular word. You can't, because it's the human nature to forget things unless you reinforce that memory. So I think the key word here would be repetition. You have got to repeat that process a lot of times. 10 times, 20 times, I don't know, it depends on the individual. And you can let this happen naturally. You can see a word for the first time and look it up in the dictionary. The next time you see it, you'll have a vague idea of what that word means. The third time you see it, you'll have a slightly clearer picture of that word. The more you do this, the more you see that word, the better you know the word. And at some point you start incorporating that word into your active vocabulary, which means you can start using that word yourself. Or you can take advantage of programs that are engineered in a way that speeds up this process. Spaced, repetition-based programs like Anki use algorithms that are designed to present to you a word you've learned the moment you're about to forget it, making it a lot more efficient and effective. If you use Anki consistently, you'll learn those words for sure. Also, I think you should create your own flashcards, because I think you have personal connections to the words that you put into these flashcards, which is important. You could also download the pre-made decks from Anki website, which is okay too, just not as good. The web and Android version of Anki are free to use, but you have to pay for the iOS version. Another good way to speed up this process is to immerse yourself in English more. You've got to be exposed to English more to learn faster. And a good way to do this is to watch TV shows. When watching TV shows, you can learn new words, learn grammar, improve your pronunciation and accent, and improve your listening comprehension skills, and learn about English-speaking countries' cultures all at the same time. I think this is what has helped me the most, and a lot of my friends who are good at English have also said that watching TV shows helps them as well. There's a lot of TV shows that you can choose to learn from, but I think comedy shows are the best because the language used in these shows is very good for English learners, as opposed to like sci-fi shows which involve too much fighting and noise, which are fun to watch but just not very good to learn from. Alright, that also concludes this video. Thank you for watching all the way until the end. If you like this video, please like and subscribe and leave a comment below in English or in Vietnamese. I would love to read your comment, and see you in my next video.